Hi, I'm Gina-R-Farrar, reinvention coach, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap podcast, and leader of this amazing global community of women. If you are approaching midlife or are already in the thick of it, welcome home. Please grab a cup of something wonderful and join me for some real talk, practical strategies, and a big dose of sisterhood. I am so glad you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and to live a more vibrant, whole second half. Today, we're going to be having a more serious conversation. If you've been following me for any length of time, you may have heard me say that I was raised in my formative years in an abusive home. My mom was abused by my stepfather. So when I come across someone who has a message that will help those women and those children who grow up to become adults, hopefully, I want to say yes. And my guest today is going to be talking to us about someone that could be you that's experiencing emotional abuse. And this conversation is from the perspective of the victim who is coping with and looking for ways to recognize it and deal with their own day-to-day situation. My guest has been with me before. This is a follow-up. She's written a second book. And so today I'm speaking with Mariette Jansen again. She's the author of The Rule Book of a Narcissist, and she's a contributor to Psychology Today. Mariette, thank you for coming back on the show.
It's lovely to be here again, Gina. Lovely to see you.
Yes, and I of course, will put a link referring people back to the original conversation so they can get the big picture about who you are and where you come from. But can you give new listeners or my past listeners just a reminder of who you are and why this message is so important to you?
I'm a Dutch woman who lives in the UK, and I grew up in a dysfunctional family. It took me about 58 years to really discover how wrong it was what happened in my family. And it was not only that it was wrong, but it went a bit further. I recognized the type of abuse. My mother is a narcissist, and she ruled the family and she ruled my life for all that time. She was very, very important. She was always on the background with all the decisions I made. And I so wanted it to work between her and me. And then I got to 58 and I had to give up the hope. I really sort of had to admit to myself that what I really wanted in life was never, ever going to happen. And that is when I could step away and felt the freedom to really talk about it, write about it, and share what happened to me. What happened then was that I got enormous amounts of feedback from people who were saying, I recognize your situation. The story you're telling could be mine. What is going on? This is the answer that I have been looking for. So it really mirrored what was going on for me. I was looking for answers for all those years. No one gave them to me. I discovered it then, and now I can offer it to other people.
So you've written this book, The Rule Book of a Narcissist. Now, explain the context of the rules.
Narcissistic personality disorder, is actually really simple. It's about people who follow a certain pattern. And I have met so many victims of narcissistic abuse. And so many people have told the same stories, even the same examples, using the same wordings, regardless of age, gender, where they are in the world. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And I then started to sort of, on Instagram, every week I thought, I'll post a rule of a narcissist, and then I post an answer for someone, to keep themselves safe and sane, to how to deal with this rule. And after I've done that for about 15 weeks, I thought, wait a moment, why don't I bundle this and make it into a book? And I collected 63 rules, 63 because it's like a magical number, it's together, it's 9, and it represents emotions and safety and some other symbolics are there. I mean, I could have 69 rules or 59, because they are a little bit similar, but 63 rules seem to be the right number. So I collected these 63 rules in this book and have made the layout really accessible. So on one side, it's the rule. And it's not endless words. It's really simply explaining what the rule stands for, maybe an example there. And then on the other side is the helpful response. If the person in your life who emotional abuses you is using this rule, what is a helpful response for you? So instead of getting your knickers in a twist, instead of causing a big argument or a big fight, maybe there are responses that are more helpful for you.
Let's talk about those rules. Help us understand a little bit.
The rules, I've divided them in 4 different ones. Yeah, the first one is the narcissist. This is what I am. Very clear. I do this, I do that, I think like that. The second type of rules is all about, this is how I see you. So you are stupid, you are less than I am, you always get it wrong, that sort of things. The third set of rules is about behavior, how the abuser is bullying the victim. You have to do this, you have to do that. And then the fourth set of rules is all about the relationship. This is how I see the relationship. So an example of the first rule, this is who I am. One is, it's not number one, it's one of the rules. It's, I have the emotional maturity of a toddler. Now, it's really important to understand that when people are suffering from narcissistic personality disorder, that they are emotionally very unaware and not very developed. They are like a toddler. They want to win. They want to have their way. If they don't get their way, they throw a tantrum. I want to have my way. And it can get angry or nasty or walk away. It's very sort of childish behavior. So that's a rule in that category. And another rule is I always make people wait, because a narcissist wants to have attention and want to feel important. Well, if you make people wait, then you have their emotional attention anyway, because everyone's looking at their watch and thinking, "Oh, well, where are they? We want to move on with the next bit of the day, but they're not here yet." And then when they arrive, everyone is like, "Oh, there you are." And again, it's another wave. So that's typical how this is an example of the rules of how a narcissist operates. The next set of rules is all about you. So you are stupid. That is how the narcissists look at their victims. You can't be anything more than stupid, because they always have to be better than you anyway. So they start by putting you down. You never get it right. You always ruin everything. It's all these sort of put downs that are being thrown out. So that's the second set of rules. Then the third one is, it's all about how I want you to be. So one of the things would be, stop being opinionated and outspoken. I don't want you to behave like that. I want you to behave differently. And you have to listen to me, because if you don't, I will punish you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you don't, you make me unhappy. And if you make me unhappy, I will make you more unhappy. So stop being opinionated and outspoken. The helpful response there, for instance, is be careful with what you say back to them, because sometimes it's much better to keep your mouth shut, turn away, not engage with what they are throwing out, because it will evoke an argument or a punishment for you. And then the last category is it's all about the relationship. And the relationship is like when you're the victim and the abuser is not happy with you. The abuser will say, you behave in a certain way. That's why I behave in a certain way. You make me do it. It's your fault. It's that typical blaming cycle from which they are operate. And as a victim, you try to do the right thing. As a result, you never know what is the right thing. As a result, you can't make really decisions and you're walking on eggshells because you're like, oh, I don't know how this goes down today because yesterday it worked, but today it might not work. Because that's another thing. You know, the abusers are just changing their mind all the time. Whatever works for them at that moment in time, that's what they show. There's no consistency at all.
Mm. So if somebody finds themselves in this conversation, like, that sounds familiar. Gee, that's something that I see. And maybe they've been somewhat unaware. Maybe it's so comfortable or they're so used to it, or that role of being less than, not as smart, not as good, whatever that story is. How do you help them to shift their own power? Because it really is a power struggle, right? The victim lays down their power and the narcissist is just wielding whatever power they think they have.
Yeah. And an emotional abusive relationship, the victim loses their sense of self. It's like they're sacrificing themselves. My clients are saying, I used to be so confident. I used to be so bubbly. I've lost it all. It's all being chipped away because they have given into their abuser. They thought it was okay. So they have given too much of themselves and lost themselves. With that, lost their confidence as well. In order to start building yourself up again, it's like tapping into connecting with yourself. What is it I really want? What is it what really is my opinion on this, regardless of my partner, my parents, whoever is the abuser in their life, and then gently start building from there. Another important thing as well is in that whole process is self-respect and self-value. When people respect themselves enough, they will step away from abuse because they will say, I'm too good for this. I'm not having this. Yeah, this is not good for me. And I'm too important to allow this to happen to me. That might be how they started. And that's very sort of skillfully been chipped away by the abuser. That needs to be built up in the coaching or the therapy process as well, or in the self-help process. You know, there's a lot that people can do themselves. The thing with emotional abuse and narcissists is that the victims very often start to take the blame for what happens and start to make excuses. Oh, yes, my partner is doing that. It's just because he's tired or he's working so hard. And look what he's providing for the family. So much money he brings in, but he works really hard for it. So I should sort of be a little bit giving to him. It's okay. It's sort of, I shouldn't make a fuss about that. Sometimes, of course, it's in a relationship, it is give and take, but there are things, if you find yourself making excuses for the behavior of someone else in your life, take a closer look, because that might be a red flag that there is some abuse going on.
In my experience, the one I grew up in, as well as a couple of people in my life, of course, that I've come across that have had these experiences to varying degrees and with varying kinds of abuse. And that, I think, is where there's a bit of a gray area in the victim's mind, because it's easy to think of abuse in a very specific way. Like abuse is something I have a mark to prove, right? I have a
Mm-hmm.
bruise, I have a scratch, I have a broken bone. Like, even those women make excuses, but there's some kind of physical manifestation of the abuse. And, you and I have had a couple of conversations over the first time that we talked, because this is of interest to me, having had a friend who was in the emotional version.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found, Mariette, and this is something I just kind of want to talk through from your professional standpoint. Mine is just personal experience. What I found is the victim is often more emotional intelligent than the abuser, but they might have children, or there's certain situations, and they find themselves slowly just kind of putting up with things so that, so that we don't fight in front of the kids, or so that I can just get dinner made, or so that I can just, lay my head down on this. I just don't want to have this argument right now.
Yeah.
Not from a healthy perspective, but you watch them slowly begin to lose the reality of truth. What is true? That is the thing that I've experienced walking other people's journey with them, that I think one of the byproducts of being in this kind of an abusive relationship with a narcissist is they're so often telling you their truth, or the truth they want you to believe, that at some point truth becomes lost.
Yeah. Well, and being told as the victim that you are so stupid, no one believes you, I am always right, you are to blame for what goes wrong, continuously.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you take some of that on board, and it chips away on the confidence, on trusting yourself, on connecting with yourself, and seeing what is happening for what it really is. There's another element as well, and that is the narcissist. One of the rules. My most important accessory is my mask. Outside where it all happens, where the abuse happens in the world, I'm very charming. I'm lovely. I'm generous. I'm interested in people. I seem to come across really pleasant. If the victim then talks to someone and say, it's so difficult to live with this person, or in my case, what my mother is doing at home, I don't think it's right. People just didn't believe me either. So when as a victim, you think it's not right, it's not the truth, let me check it out. Then very often the feedback is like exactly what the abuser is saying, you got it wrong. How can you say that? The person you're talking about is lovely, the way I know him, but that's not the way that the victim knows him or her.
Oh my gosh. You're talking, and I have a scene in my mind of a past experience with a friend that I walked through this difficult journey with her. Her husband crossed the line to physical abuse, but his primary, I guess, vehicle was definitely narcissism, with the charm and the appearance, like the social media that's I'm a leader and I'm this. And it's just very like so much ego.
Yeah.
Clearly I'm still irritated with the guy, but it's interesting because when things began to happen, her response was, he has such a reputation and he has a business, and I don't want to harm his reputation. And of course, I'm not the one in the situation, and my personality is a little bit less compliant, I suppose. So I was trying to point the truth out to her, that it doesn't matter if they give money to charity or if they do all these wonderful things. If you are being abused by this person, it doesn't matter what else they do in the world. It does not ever excuse that behavior. That is the thing that has come up, is they worry about, one, nobody would believe them anyway. Like, how are they going to prove this good guy wrong?
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, you can't convince people because they see the mask. Okay, where do you start? I don't think you start with convincing other people. I think that's an inside job. So what's the starting point to moving from, I'm going to use your first book title, from victim to victor? How do you do that? Because that's a hero's journey. It really is. You're being your own hero.
It is about finding that self-respect again. Yeah. And I think in the journey, it will be so good to find other people. I'm totally with you when I said it is an internal job, but because there is so much doubt, and you have been told so often you get it wrong, and you see the picture of this glamorous, rich, giving person, and you think, well, should I damage his reputation and everything that goes with it? And actually, I'm not as important. You know, there might even religious ideas coming up, like, you know, and don't be too selfish and all that sort of stuff. But it's connecting with yourself and making yourself the center of your universe. Like the narcissist is making him or herself the center of the universe, but also want to be the center of the universe of other people. That's not on. If you are the center of your own universe, you can make the decisions that are helpful for you. However, when you are a victim of abuse for a long time, it's really difficult to get that space. And it's really helpful to connect with people who understand the type of abuse. Not talking to whoever is available, because you will get a lot of disbelief and dismissiveness. Really selecting the people you can talk to, checking them out, maybe a professional, maybe via a Facebook group. You know, there are lots of groups for victims of narcissism. There's Quora, and so you can find people who will know what you are talking about and who will give you the right support. And from there, you can build yourself up again.
Yeah, which is different than trying to convince people that the person isn't who they say they are. You're talking about personal support and building that kind of community around yourself, regardless of what they're doing. This is disconnecting from that identity that everything's about them. Yeah.
And I think that's really what you're saying there, Gina, is really important. Disconnecting from the abuser. Because what happens with a narcissist, they get their claws in you and they want to control you with everything. There's a lot of I think they called it techo abuse. It's like phone text messages. Yeah, a text message here, text message there. I'm calling you, I'm emailing you, I'm making sure that every hour I'm on your radar, because I do not want to let you go. I don't want you to go somewhere where I can't control you. It's that sort of thing. And that's then becomes an emotional attachment, and it becomes an addiction, which is then called a trauma bond, which is another whole other story, but that's part of it as well, where you're so sucked in to be in touch and full of, and your mind full of your narcissist, that it's impossible to step away from that. I call them an octopus. And I say usually a narcissist is like, you imagine an octopus in a romantic relationship. You open your heart, the octopus comes in, of course, because, you know, they fill your heart. It's all warm and glowing. You think, oh, it is nice and the world is pink. And then the octopus travels up and they travel into your head. And they suck out everything that's in your head and they put in their poison and they take possession of your mental space. And most victims of narcissistic abuse spend 95% of their thoughts on their narcissist or on situations that are connected with their narcissist. And that is scary. That is losing yourself and your sense of self.
What might be some red flags? If somebody is so deep, Mariette, that it's, the excuses are just so normal, right? I was tired, he was tired, whatever it is, he had a long day, he's under a lot of stress, blah, blah, blah. How does someone begin to identify?
I have a questionnaire. It's on it's via Psychology Today, under one of my articles. Under all my articles, you can just click it. There are 10 questions there. And if you answer those questions, they might give you an insight on what is going on. One of the questions is, I don't feel comfortable in the presence of my narcissist. I don't trust this person. This person is moody or unreliable in their moods. It seems to be very critical of me. I never can do anything right. Yeah, it's inconsistent what they say to me. So today they love broccoli and I make a broccoli dish. And the next time I make that same broccoli dish, it's being chucked in the bin because how can you make broccoli? Because I don't like broccoli. Drives people, it drives you mad. But it's like on all sorts of levels, that sort of manipulation. You've noticed that they are lying and that are unreliable. And that's specifically with children, sort of, I will bring little Johnny to the football today. And then actually nowhere to be seen. And the mom is then at fault because, you should have made your arrangements anyway. So it's really upsetting the whole family. When someone in your environment is playing that role, then those are all signs, these are all red flags that something's not right.
So you're looking for consistent, inconsistent behavior.
Yes.
Trying to nail Jell-O down, sort of.
Nail Jell-O down. Yeah, but you word that really nicely. And it's like, as a result, you can feel yourself as a victim walking on eggshells because you never know what to expect.
There's a key word. You never know what to expect. That's a really good, fairly easy to identify flag, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when someone is constantly being told how little they matter, that becomes a belief system in the victim. And that's a harder one, I think, to overcome because it becomes a belief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how do you help?
Yeah, and that is holding back from the healing. Yeah, because it is a tough journey to take on the journey of overcoming the abuse. It starts with really looking at what is happening. But because of making excuses, because I'm not important, when people make excuses for somebody else, they make the other person more important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a word that comes up as well, it's called cognitive dissonance. It's like something is going on in your system. Something doesn't work quite well, but you want to make it work. So you make up the story. So your partner lets you down for 4 times in a row. He was taking you out for dinner, but he is not doing it. All the time, you make up the excuse or the story that makes it acceptable for you. Because if it's not acceptable for you, you have a big argument and you're thinking, well, I'm not important, is it? So I make it acceptable. And when you are that deep down in the abusive relationship, is really, really difficult to get out. So in order to get out, you need to understand what is happening from an objective point of view. So step away from emotions, which also is very difficult because it's one emotional roller coaster.
That's the game, isn't it?
Yeah, because logic doesn't count. your abuser is not logical. And that's what drives people in those situations mad as well. But you want to talk about something. You said, let's talk about this situation. And then the abuser changes the focus totally from the content. Let's change about the situation, what is not right or what could be changed, to the process. I don't like the way you talk to me. How dare you talk to me like that? And all of a sudden, that's what you're being spoken to about. The way you present the issue is more important than the issue itself. And you think, we started this conversation to get somewhere. And I don't know where I am now. Totally thrown off kilter.
Yes. Wow. So it is a difficult journey to take alone. That's where getting that outside support is so important, because depending on the depth and the length of this emotionally abusive relationship, the person who is abused has been assigned an identity. And for whatever reason, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way, they've accepted it, because that's kind of where the personal responsibility lies in the problem. Is you have handed your power over. You have handed your identity over. Now, you might not have been like, here you go, as cognitively aware as that, but over time, to make things, quote, easier. I don't want to fight. I don't want to, whatever. They're a good provider. I have a roof over my, whatever it is that makes us as women, because there are female narcissists, don't get me wrong, but because my audience is female, let's just say we hand that power over. We do have some responsibility in some way, because at some point we chose to not stand up for ourselves. And I don't mean this like in like we're at fault, but there is a partnership in this relationship, is there not?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Strictly speaking, there is, but specifically a narcissist is so manipulative and so clever and plays the victim in a way that it is really difficult to pinpoint where the victim hands over. And love bombing is a term that's been used in narcissism, where the narcissist gives you everything and is the dream partner and is being so lovely. And the love bombing stage comes back from time and again. So it's like there's a dangling carrot in front of you. Yeah, it's that, oh, no, he isn't that bad. Oh, the relationship can still be saved. And it's that playing and that disappointment and then getting over it and then finding the hope and then fighting for the relationship again, because I think that's where the crux is. The narcissist is not doing anything. They let their victims work and work. So the victim then thinks that they take responsibility and they put an effort in and they really go for it. And then they're whacked off their feet again and they're down in the gutter. And then they start a journey again. So yes, ultimately you hand over your power, but I think the power is chipped away in the process. And then when the realization kicks in that this is an unhealthy relationship, usually there's already a lot of this person has disappeared. It's really, that's really difficult. And I think what narcissists, because they make their victim responsible for everything. The victim thinks, oh, it's my fault. Oh, I should have done things differently. Oh, I could have done da-da-da-da-da. But it's never the narcissist who says, I will take responsibility for this element in the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's never a tennis game. It's more like well, if it is a tennis game, then the narcissist is doing the smashes on the other end of the net and boom, get you out all the time.
So I'm processing what you're saying. So the responsibility, we do hand over, let's say, our power in whatever way, But because we're always at fault, right? We feel like we're doing something or we're fixing something. It gives us a focus or a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And it keeps you in the relationship. Because if you say, you know what, F you, it's not going to work, I step away from this. This is what normally happens, isn't it? You get together with someone, you try it out, it doesn't work. You say, you know what, we're not compatible, I'm not happy, I step away. It's not like that. It's this continuous game. I want you to work at a relationship. You are responsible. If you behave differently, it might work. If you do things different in the future, we will do this, and the other. And here, I'll give you a taster. Do you remember how nice it was in the beginning? Well, it can still be that nice, but you have to make it work. You have to change. You have to put the effort in. And then the type of people who attract a narcissist and who a narcissist is attracted to is an empath. Empathic people want to understand, they want to make it work, they want to forgive, they are prepared to put a lot of effort in. So they're the perfect candidates for the emotional abuser.
Yes. Again, there are a couple of situations that I've walked through with other women that I see that. And the confusion that those women experienced because their air quote truth had been so twisted. It was so far from real. It's like, it's not really far from the real truth, but it feels so far from the real truth. Like the reality is the truth is right there. Like you're not that far, but the narcissist has created such a matrix around you that you can't figure out. That's the experience that I had with these couple of women that are coming to mind.
Yeah. And I think, Gina, there's another emotional element. Victims are consumed by fear. Fear for doing it wrong. Fear for the reactions. There's a lot of fear. I think fear then blocks how you can see the reality. And the other big emotion that is there is hope. Hope that it will all be as beautiful as it was in the beginning. And it's those two emotions, the hope and the fear, that it's almost like a seesaw. It keeps you going. Yeah, the fear makes you behave in a certain way and sort of, I can't stand up for myself. And then the hope is like, and if I do these sort of things, it might all be all right because it was okay at one stage. And that is how it then swings. And the swing is going down and down and down. And ultimately it digs you in the deepest dark hole, isn't it?
It's like a cancerous tumor, It starts in one spot and then it just metastasizes and a person can't figure it out.
Yeah.
But there's hope.
Of course. I mean, I'm an example of that. Yeah, you can come out of this whole bubble of abuse. It's not easy. You will lose things on the way. You will lose friends. You will lose possibly money. You will lose maybe status. Whatever it is, there is always a price to pay because your narcissist will make sure that you have a price to pay. But the reward will be the freedom to be yourself. That's worth it all.
You said there will always be a loss or a cost along the way because the narcissist will make sure you pay.
Yeah.
And from an outsider's perspective, I want to be very clear from an outsider's perspective. I look at that and say, that's what you should be looking at. The fact that they will make sure you pay is the proof that you don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah.
Like that's the exclamation point. You've done all you can. And now you're like, I can't do this anymore. And they still.
It comes down to the thinking pattern of the narcissist. It's all about them. They don't care about others. It's all about winning.
Mm.
And if you're not with me, you're against me.
Mm.
And I'll never let the truth get in the way of what I want. That's another one. Yeah. So that's how they operate. If you move away from a narcissist, they lose. They lose the control and they want to be in control. And therefore, you need to be punished. You need to know who's the boss and who's the winner. And the punishment is also, for instance, smear campaigns. It's just horrific. The stories I've heard in last year and ridiculous situations. You know, a woman divorcing her husband, and the husband then at the school gate telling stories that she had an affair and up. And we were talking about this. This was a client saying, well, who seriously is interested in if you are having an affair or not? You know, what's the point of that? But it's so way off the mark. It's anything that in desperation that can give you a black mark.
Mm. And I guess the choice is, do I stay in the suffering or do I endure this smear campaign, this violent attack on my character, but eventually be free? Because you'll never be free in the relationship with a narcissist.
Yeah. So the pain point needs to be so strong that anything is better than staying in that relationship. And lots of victims of narcissistic abuse suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, bad sleep, nightmares, anxiety attacks, flashbacks, you know, because it is the threat of, and this is the eggshell thing, and the fear that is really sort of gone out of control. If that happens, then it's clear as well that you're in a very, very unhealthy relationship.
Is the PTSD happening in the relationship or when you try to leave it?
It starts in the relationship, but then it usually flares up in the time that you want to go out of it. Because then it's almost as if there's the emotional space to let it happen. You don't have to constrain yourself, and you know there is less input. Which means that what has happened before can really come to the surface.
Yeah, it's such a complicated situation when our emotions get involved like that.
Yeah.
You know, but the beauty of the way our brains are designed is just as our brains can be convinced of things that aren't true, there's work that can be done and people that can help with helping our brains rewire, you know.
Absolutely.
Neuroplasticity works both directions, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like when you remove yourself from an abusive situation, it's almost like, you know, change your internal dialogue, change your truth, even if you're not 100% clear, not 100% sure, keep on repeating the helpful messages to yourself. And don't pay attention to the old messages that you have been indoctrinated with.
You're beginning to reject the indoctrination.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How do people find you? How do they get in touch with you on the internet? Where are you at, Mariette?
Yeah, I'm in the UK. You know, I do my sessions via Zoom, of course, thanks to COVID and thanks to where my clients are now. But my website is drdestress.co.uk. So DRDE stress.co.uk. And I offer a free coaching session for anyone who wants to have some validation. Am I with a narcissist or not? What can I do? Sometimes people then sign up for a few coaching sessions. That's fine, but you know, they don't have to. In Psychology Today, I have, it's called From Victim to Victor. So that's my blog there. It's all about narcissism. And underneath there's a link to my book and there's a link to the questionnaire, you know, a little quiz, just 10 questions that might give you an indication if you are dealing with a narcissist. And if you do that quiz, you get a free ebook on narcissism as well. So again, that might give you a handle on what is going on. Where you then think, oh, no, that's not happening in my life. Or when you think, yeah, that resonates. So there might be something there. And then, of course, my books, I mean, the feedback is they're easy to read. They're very accessible. It's not theory. I'm not going into this. I'm just talking about you as a victim. So what do you experience? What is going on? So that makes it quite relatable and easy. And so you can pick up the messages quite easily, I would say.
Plain talk.
Plain talk, no nonsense. I'm Dutch after all. Yeah, a spade is a spade. Very direct and very, simple. I think I like simplicity in complexity.
Now, if you were to give 3 key things that you want people to really think about, take away, they could be starting points, they could be truths. What 3 things would you want my audience to take away from this conversation?
I would love you all to put yourself at the center of your universe and give yourself the respect, the love, and the attention that you deserve. You won't get it from anybody else. We all travel by ourselves from birth till grave. You know, the person who travels with you is you. So become your own best friend forever, your BFF, and treat yourself like that. And if you do that, it will be possible to recognize abuse and to step away from abuse. And once you do that, once you can really be your own best friend, that opens you up to be the authentic you. No noise on the line. No messages from other people that are more important than your own messages. And I think we're all here to live the way we are ourselves, the authentic you. I think I don't know if that's 3 points. I don't know how I said that.
But put yourself at the center of your universe, treating yourself well, and be your own authentic you. Take the noise out of the line. And how about one more?
It requires work, continuous work. Happiness, fulfillment, and authenticity is a continuous work in progress. But it's worth it.
That's the key, isn't it? It is worth it.
Oh, yeah.
The freedom isn't free, we would say, right? And that's true personally as well as an entire country or a world, right? Freedom comes at a cost, but so does slavery, right? And we have to choose our price, I suppose, our cost.
Yeah, and I think if you choose freedom, you can take control of that freedom, but that means you have to put an effort in. If you don't do anything, everything that happens to you then is being dictated by others. And before you know, you're in another situation where you feel helpless and think, how did I get in this? And you got in there because you didn't stand up. You didn't say, oh, stop, boundaries. This is not good for me. And I think in the world where we're living in, and this is how humans behave, this is how dogs behave. Yeah, they push boundaries. People and living beings always try to get as much as they can. And it's not nasty, but they just try. Unless someone says, no, you've had enough. You don't come any closer. So, oh, okay. I just wanted to know. So I step away. It's a continuous dance where you say, this is what I allow you to be in my life. Not closer, not further. This is okay. But if you lose it, if you lose the attention, then you don't know what's going to happen.
And sometimes that unknown is scary. But if what you know is uncomfortable, full of fear, causing you anxiety, there's something better. That freedom is worth the fight, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
Mariette, I want to thank you so much for being with me today and expanding on this conversation about what you've learned, how you help people, and how important it is that there are women who have had this experience. to have the courage, 1, to get out of it, and 2, to share their story, and then 3, to become that partner that you talked about people need to find that can walk with women as they reclaim their identities, their own truth, and their freedom. And so I'm grateful that you've taken that courageous and brave journey and that you are making a difference. There's beauty from your ashes, and I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So today, friends, I've been speaking with Mariette Jansen. She is the author of The Rule Book of a Narcissist and From Victim to Victor. She's a contributor to Psychology Today. And if you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 243, I will have the links that Mariette shared with me. You can also join my tribe while you're there. I send out periodic emails just of encouragement. Friends, this is one of those important conversations. If you see yourself or someone you love fitting into this picture that Mariette was painting today, please consider sharing this information. Please consider opening those difficult conversations. We cannot do for other people what they will not do for themselves, but we can be a vehicle of maybe shining a light. If you find yourself being the victim, here's a resource you can read that will empower you. And you can reach out to Mariette and have a free consultation. There are ways to be set free. Don't allow fear to rule your life. You can live a more whole, healthy life. You can have healthy relationships. Just be encouraged that you're not alone. If you find yourself in this situation, please reach out and use these resources and let us know how this has helped you. We want to thank you for joining us today. And we ask that you would just rate and subscribe this. Reach out to Mariette. Let her know how this has impacted your life. And we look forward, friends, to sharing more episodes with more conversations for you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.